when I did the demo. So we are Aiken actually, and we build Nuance. And Nuance is a Web3 blogging platform, obviously. We started building this, towards the end of last year. Myself and Paul, who's on the call, he'll take you through some more technical stuff later. I'm a product guy. So we've been building this blogging platform called Nuance. We released alpha a couple of weeks ago. And when I say alpha, I mean extremely alpha. But we wanted to get something in front of the users as quickly as possible to start getting feedback as quickly as possible. So we only have like a handful of users on it at the moment. We actually found some pretty significant bugs. For example, things don't work when you have Grammarly in your browser. So we didn't actually test for that, and that came out in the first set of alpha users. So that was super useful. And of course, that's what you do in alpha. But we have fixed that, and we've fixed a few other little things. We're almost ready to invite our second wave of authors. So we've had nearly 5,000 people sign up for registration, pre-registration. I'm not sure how many of those are just authors, but yeah, it's actually over 5,000 now. So our next wave of authors, as I said, we'll invite those in the coming days, I think, as we get more comfortable with the platform. Anything to add to the intro before I start demo? I'll take that as a no. What is it with engineers and they can't use user interfaces? Okay, it's probably down on the left. No. Okay. So I will just going to start sharing. Of course, Paul, just speak up when you want to. Okay. So I think you can see my browser now. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep, we can.
Okay. So I'm just going to do with no search results. This is working as expected. I just want to show you that the hacking's not there to begin with. Okay, so yes, yeah, you can. We're aware we have a Web2 login, and there's several reasons for that. One is that when we built this, Plug hadn't released, wasn't released, and the II was still having a bit of some teething issues. So we decided to hack around that and build a Web2 login, basically. But of course, that is basically top of our priority list is to build a Web3 login. So we're super aware that it sucks, the logins that I just showed you, but please bear with us. Okay. So, of course, this is just when you log in, welcome message. We haven't figured out what to do with this just yet. Eventually, it's going to be, basically your feed. So the people and the tags or topics that you follow will populate your feed here. But we don't have the feature set for follow built yet, so that's why it looks like this. Okay, so let's just go to my posts. You can see here are my previous posts. You can see it's a good one here. Let's say we have the title, which is a link to the article. We have the tags for the article. We have the publication date. That's the first publication date, and we can have a preview. And sorry, I have my script here. 1 sec. Okay, so then drilling down into the article, you can then see basically the reader view. It's very plain at the moment. You can actually paste images into the editor, but we haven't actually implemented the set image feature yet. But that's also basically about to start build. So yeah, there's what an article looks like. I'm sure you've all read this. I'm sure you have memorized it and printed it. Okay, so let's. Oh yeah, sorry. Down at the bottom here, of course, you have the tags created, last modified date, etc. Okie dokie. So let's go and create a post. So hopefully, well, this, I'm going to give it a title. And I'm going to make sure I include that term I said before, hacking. Some tags here, let's say, just to make it look cool. Yeah, we have a feature at the moment which is build but not deployed, which is actually we were going to have a taxonomy of tags. We had about 103 from memory tags, because tags are really important that they're standardized, because they're actually linked to reputation and moderation and a whole bunch of other stuff we can build out later. Right now it's just free text, but literally with the next deploy that will be fixed. I'm just going to go and publish that now. Okay, so now if I go to search for hacking, there you go. Boom. That went pretty well, I would say. Okay, so now let's go back to my posts here. You can see here, yes, this is the one I just created. As I mentioned before, you have to preview here, or I can go ahead and edit that article. So I can go in here and I can make it look a bit prettier. At the moment, we only have like, as I mentioned before, this is really like the, I know the term MVP gets used when it shouldn't these days. It's like one of those words. But this really is the MVP. Like it literally is title, body, you can publish, you can search, and read. Like it is the absolute minimum we could release. So you can see here, even on the formatting, we only have the very, very basic formatting. Yeah, okay, so we're also, I was about to do some cool bolding. Okay, that's the best bold you've ever seen, I bet. And you can do some underline, look at that, how cool is that? Okay, publish. Now there's no, as I said, it's quite, there's no, confirmation messages and all that kind of stuff, right? So it is quite clunky still, but as I mentioned, it's the article, so if I expand that now, you can see the edits that I just made. And I think, unless I'm wrong, Paul, I think that's it. I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, I just had a bit of a technical issue there. Oh, this does work with Grammarly as well, so any features of Grammarly will plug in there as well.
Yes, we did. We fixed that bug. It actually took us. I'll stop sharing now if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no review of the code if you want to.
Yeah. Are there any questions about the demo before we do that? Oh, maybe you said it to the end. Is that what you said, Alexa? Sorry.
Yeah, it's up to you guys. I mean, if anybody has a question now on just the product, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, yeah, Paul, I think it'd be great to go through some code and in particular, like your canister architecture. I think that'll be interesting for folks to learn a bit about that.
What are you guys doing about SEO?
I'll share my screen then.
Sorry, what was that question then, sorry?
What are you thinking about for SEO?
SEO, you said?
Yes.
Sorry.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, we all I can say is we're looking into that. Yeah, we have a few big things to overcome around SEO, how to get stuff, displayed on Twitter properly and stuff like that we're kind of looking into at the moment. These are very much on our radar, I would say.
I wanted to chime in really quick. Everyone, if you want to pressure the Dfinity team on that, there is an open ticket. We can solve it whenever we want. It's just priority 2. So raise a stink about that on the forums and we can get SEO working. I actually posted earlier today just about that specific thing. So yeah.
And what about, sorry, I don't want to derail anything here, but you know how when you post a link in social feeds and stuff like that to display, I forget what that's called, displays the actual thing like in line or whatever. Is that something similar or?
Yeah, so that'll get taken care of as well. Basically, all that needs to happen is that the robots that scrape websites need to get your actual content instead of the service worker page.
Okay, great. That's great to know. Thank you.
Okay, so if you can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yep.
Confirmation. You can see it. Okay, cool. So I started this, as Nick said, probably at the tail end of last year, and grabbed some of the examples from the website, and have loosely based the architecture on that. And then it's all subject to change. Obviously, it was all very new when we started. I've got a background using SQL Server, Oracle, and C#. So I've been developing using those tools for over 20 years. And so the whole sort of like concept of canisters and the persistence of the data was completely new to me. So what the architecture I've implemented here is to separate out the functionality according to the data type, essentially. So as an entry point, if you can think of this like the top layer interface, I've got a canister here, which is a single entry point into all of the functionality below here, which I call the query engine. And the idea of this is to act a single point of entry from the UI into either one or more canisters. I realise there's issues with latency, all that type of stuff, so we need to look at that if there's multiple canisters. But the idea was to have a single interface into the functionality below there. So you can see in here, this is just a series of methods for creating users, getting the post count, getting the post. All of the functionality that it currently uses is in this simple interface here. And then below there, I've got a canister for each of the entities that we have in the application. So we've got a post canister, a post index, and a user canister. So coming from a background of SQL Server and Oracle and the traditional database technologies, so one of the first sort of like things that I tried to tackle was if you've got multiple posts, how can you actually search for data within those posts? So we've got a post here. This post will contain, currently is going to contain all of the posts, and we've just got a simple get post, save post, etc. Get user posts and account stuff, just some debug stuff. It's just basically using a type from here. This is the type, and this is the interface into it for the status of the CRUD functionality. And then, so post index. So post index is a canister which contains essentially like a SQL Server or an Oracle index for the data in posts. And what that does is I've got a hash table in here of every word that is saved in the posts, and I just put in an entry in the hash table with the links to the posts that I'll contain that word. And it also deletes them as well. So if Nick was to delete hacking from that post that he was doing earlier, it would just remove that item from the relevant hash entry. I was thinking about the size of things because obviously currently there's that 2 gigabyte limit. But, a 2 gigabyte index in itself is a fairly big index in a big table. And I think there's something like 120,000 commonly used words in the English language anyway. So I think that the size shouldn't be a problem. But we can look at extending this if it does become an issue. So we've got post index, and we've got user. So the user is down here, and again it's just a similar pattern where we have user entry and functionality, which acts like a CRUD for activating users, creating users, saving users, and updating users. And sitting above there, we have pattern, which is very similar to the example. So we just have a whole series of JavaScript calling the methods, using the Quill RTF editor, which is what we use currently, and very similar to the example code of this templates for each of the fragments of code that we're going to inject into the front end. So we haven't started doing this yet, but we're going to rip this all out and replace this with React. But our first goal was to use existing templates and examples and just build on that. Now we're more familiar with the architecture and what we can do, and we've got a couple of other developers as well, because it was just myself and Nick. But we've got a couple of other developers, and we're going to start building a more robust front end and interface into the canisters. So that gives you a high-level overview of what we've done. Has anyone got any questions?
How are you testing locally?
How are we testing locally? That's interesting. So what we do, well, I just do a pull request on the check-ins that have been made by the devs, and then currently I'm going through a manual testing process. So we haven't got a test framework there. Now, I've seen some test frameworks on Git. I know a couple of people have been putting in some automated testing, but as yet, that's not there.
One of the things, do we want to talk about the UAT environment there, Paul? Or?
UAT environment, so testing as well. So currently I'm testing locally on a local build. I wanted to build a UAT environment, so I spun up a VM to host and manage to build and deploy into that UAT environment. But I wasn't able, for some reason, I couldn't get access from outside of that VM to allow other users like Nick and the other devs onto that environment. So what I'm looking at now is deploying like a mirror, effectively, of Nuance using different canister IDs onto the IC and having that as a UAT environment. And then doing a deployment to that UAT environment, running our testing, and then switching across to prod when we're comfortable. So effectively, we'd run two environments on the IC. What other people are doing for doing their testing? I mean, obviously, we want to build a fully automated pipeline and deployment process, but as I said, there's only started with just myself and Nick. So that's one of the things that's on our backlog. Have you got any questions or any comments?
I have a question, actually. Is there any integration plan for other dApps on the IC? And I guess give you a more specific example of what I'm looking for. The app that we're building at Cannon Story, we're trying to find integrations that allow us to give a rich experience to our user with that experience, whether it's like a blog like what you guys are doing or anything else. But is there plans in your roadmap for integration or easy integration within other dApps?
Should I?
Yeah,
well, we talked about that today, actually. And in another example, district of building an article feature, for example, and we're talking about having, some kind of standard post article, something like that, that would be accessed, via an irrevocable API kind of thing. So we have talked about it, and we would like to do it, but we haven't made any concrete plans. Does that answer your question?
It does.
We would definitely like to, and if you would like to collaborate, let's talk, because I was literally going to reach out to the district guys today, but I didn't, because it's, as I said, it's a little bit too early to do that. I believe, if I'm not wrong, Alexa, that is kind of my understanding of like what the ambition of the IC is, right? To have these these service composability parts that can be Lego bricked together.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the end goal, and I think we're working towards that. And I think some of the stuff we've talked about in past conversations too around inner canister query calls and things like that. I think once there's some work on that, I think it will not only speed up Nuance a bit, because I know you have a multi-canister architecture, but also kind of support some of these cross-app integrations and things like that.
One of the things we've done, so one of the things we're trying to do is trying to make that user experience as smooth as possible, is that when you save a post, so you save a post and that is one call, then in the background we then asynchronously do the post index call, so that functionality occurs, but the user's not sitting there waiting for it to happen. I'm going to certainly try and do that more often. It's just that the user has the bare minimum of wait time while something's going on, and anything that doesn't require the user to get feedback, you just do it in the background.
We have a very full roadmap. We have I don't know if it's a 20-year roadmap, but it's at least 2. And of course, so the next features we want to build out, so just to give you a very, very quick run through. So we want to effectively, build out the basic blogging feature. So that's our number 1 priority after Web3 login. So we want to have a Web3 login, and then we also want to the basic blogging features, which is basically things like follow, comment, like or upvote, bookmark, and share. Yeah. So we're going to build out those basic features first. And as I said, we want to get that. We want to get a Web3 login first. And then after we do that, that's where we really start to look at, I think, the more the features that really differentiate us from the likes of Medium. I think up until we get to that, what we refer to as the beta, right? So the beta is it's kind of like a Medium functional parity. When we get to that point, that's kind of our beta release. That's also when we're going to go for seed. But it's after that where it actually starts to get quite cool. We start to look at things like the monetization ideas and tokenized governance and the moderation and stuff like that. And then that stuff we hope to start to build out next year. I think that's and at that same time, that's like for example the tokenized governance part. That's the part where we're hoping to lean on the foundation a little bit to see what kind of stuff we can get out of the box. I think we have some pretty cool ideas for monetization that we want to get out the door very quickly, not just to monetize, but because I think that's really a differentiator for the authors. That's going to really attract some good content.
And the other part of that first chunk of work is a refresh of the UI as well, isn't it? So this is like our alpha UI. And what it's a bit clunky. We recognise it's a bit clunky, but we're going to be refreshing that as well. So then the next significant release will contain, it'll look different, and it'll have follow, comment, like, dislike, whatever. All that sort of the normal stuff in there.
And of course, we will be doing like a big release. That's not what Paul means, right? We're going to be, of course, drip feeding this out as soon as it's ready. It's not like we're going to have a Windows 95 release type thing. But yeah. But that is the stuff that we want to do first. So it's a little bit boring in the beginning, I have to say, because it's not that amazing compared to Medium. But I think after that, it gets really cool.
Yeah, but there's also, this is a completely new framework, and it's a completely new way of, for me anyway, for deploying things and testing things, and we're still working on how we get that to being production ready as well. So how do you deploy securely and know that you're deploying something that's going to wipe out all the existing data? How do you test that you're going to do that? It's not going to wipe out the data. And there's a whole series of things that are new to us that we're still learning and building those processes out.
How do you actually do that right now? How do you save the data? I know some people actually print it out.
Well, we're using the static data in the canister. And there's
You know that it has the potential to delete the old data. I'm just curious if you're taking backups.
That's one.
Well, actually, Paul, do you remember last time before we did the big deploy, I copied everything into a Word document.
Ideally, I'd like to see something out of the box, but I'm thinking we're going to have a process where we dump the data on a regular basis, or a delta of the data on a regular basis, store it somewhere. Unless.
How about using IPFS for that purpose?
Using what, sorry?
IPFS.
No, I haven't. No. And what are other people doing? What districts doing?
I'm not sure what district is doing, but I've been using IPFS for a while in alongside the canister, because in the beginning, right before gigabyte limit was very restrictive, and now it's opening up. But even still, situations like that where redundancy is needed, or just like faster querying sometimes, or just larger files, IPFS is a great solution to supplement canisters, because you are able to save large amounts of data in MP3s and videos and stuff like that, but it just helps as a redundancy to the canister situation as it stands right now. That'll change in the future, obviously, but I just brought up that's what I've been doing. I know a couple people talk about it in the chat, but I'm not sure what district is doing right now.
Like the one that Fleek is offering.
Okay.
Is it the one that Fleek is offering? IPFS?
Yeah. They have IPFS. And we actually talked to them too. They're actually working on a IC equivalent to what they currently offer with IPFS. But they're a great route to go because when they've gone full into this whole IC space. So I trust them more than Pinata, other IPFS providers. But yeah, they're all working on IC. An IC equivalent to IPFS right now.
Okay, I'll certainly look at that.
What about IC Drive? We could also use that. Wouldn't that be an ideal solution for that? Or is IC Drive not what I think it is?
Yeah, you can use that too. IPFS is like a full.
You've just been using IPFS,
right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Now
Yeah.
So what are the advantages that you see on IPFS side beyond the lower cost of storage? I'm curious to learn more.
Redundancy, right? Canisters are great for computation, but I feel like for a bucket, IPFS is way better, and that's their focus, right? They're focused on providing that service while canisters are trying to do all the things, and they're good at doing that. But right now, because of all the things you guys already know, right? Inter-canister calls are slow. The limitation on stable memory is still there, even though it's going to increase over time. IPFS just gives you that solution. We need to store a big giant video file quickly and then query it quickly in a decentralized manner. It gives you that ability. And when your goal is a decentralized application, sometimes you need other decentralized pieces that aren't part of the same ledger or network to come to create that goal of decentralized computation, right? So that's why I think it's better right now. In the future, that may change though, right? In the future, we might need it at all, but right now, IPFS is great for large files, for having redundancy, and just giving your users a great experience, because sometimes it's not the easiest thing to give your users that experience they're used to on traditional platforms because of inter-canister calls, right, mainly. I don't know if you guys use that CDN that Gabriel made. It's good, but it's kind of slow depending on what part of the flow you're in, right? And with application, I don't think that's the best experience to give a user, because they're going to be wondering why you're waiting, why they're waiting, right? For something to happen. But yeah, that's why I use it.
Got it. So I think one aspect that you mentioned is so for example, if it's within the same canister, then I would certainly assume that it's going to be much faster for like if everything is within the canister. But if I hear you correctly, then if things are across different canisters and because of the limitations in the inter-canister calls today, IPFS would basically be faster.
Yeah, because of chunking, you get like the CDN that exists right now does like 500 kilobytes, I think, per chunk. So if those chunks are across multiple canisters and you're waiting a while to get that entire file together, so you can then present it to your user, IPFS doesn't give you that issue. So it's a great supplement to the IC, in my opinion. Treating IPFS as a bucket and the canister as a computation is one of the ways of delivering a great experience to your user.
Yeah, and I hear you. I think, and I kind of take those points as, of course, chunking and solving for the inter-canister query calls. I think so. Those are some of the things that, of course, the foundation is working on. But I hear your points. Thank you.
Very useful though. I'm going to certainly investigate that.
Awesome. Any other questions for the team? Things you want to bring up?
So what's next for you guys? What are your plans like in terms of building this further? How are you thinking about it?
I'll go first, Paul. I think we're ramping up the team, right? So we have, as Paul mentioned, we have two engineers currently. We start another one. I don't know when they start this weekend, maybe Monday, and we have second interviews for 2 more next week. So that would bring the total plus Paul to 5 engineers. They're all part time, to be honest. So it's not as much capacity as one would like. Sorry, one of the guys we speak to next week is close to full time. So that's kind of what we're focusing on to ramp up some capacity. But of course, they're traditional engineers, so there's going to be quite some onboarding and ramping up their knowledge of the canisters and all that kind of stuff. So that's where a lot of our focus is at the moment. And then, as I mentioned before, our roadmap of just building out these table stake type blog features.
And the first thing is getting that authentication, the Web3 authentication, which we'll be looking at immediately. So it's getting that authentication and adding the standard post features of being able to comment, like a post, share a post, follow a user. There's the whole series of ones. Yeah.
I mean, I have a. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, for the moment it's a fairly standard, fairly stable product before we then start integrating the monetization aspect of it.
As I think we touched on, right? So we also have to rebuild the front end in React. And of course, there's a lot of under the hood stuff, right? That we also need to build, like we were talking before, like a UAT environment and continuous deployment and all this kind of fun stuff that we're also working on because we want to have a professional production quality product. So that's not all fun and games stuff, as you all know.
That's the iceberg, isn't it? You've got that little bit on the top, and then there's lots of
exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah, and I mentioned we're raising seed we think we're going to raise seed in December, and then everybody's all in. Actually, we're already all in, but in December we take it up a notch. I think when we get seed, if we get seed.
Okay, awesome. Well, if there's any other questions, thanks so much to the team, and thanks everyone for letting us share during the live stream today. I think you guys know where to find everyone here in Discord if you have any other questions. that come up, or if you want to get in touch with the Nuance team. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks everybody for listening.
Bye.